In this video lesson, we're going to be learning the strategy for multiplying by 5. Now, when you first started learning to tell time, you probably learned that if you're looking at a clock, you can skip count by 5s to find the minute part of the time. That's because each number on the clock is separated from the next number by 5 minutes. So you make 5 little jumps to get to the next number. So you probably did a lot of skip counting by 5s. And it probably went something like this. So you know you start at 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, and then up at the top, the 12 would be 60. But did you know that you were actually doing multiplication? How can a clock help you with multiplication? So each of these numbers, if I imagine multiplying them by 5, 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 5 is 15. 4 times 5 is 20, and so on. So I could look at a clock and say, oh, 9 times 5 must be 45. Let's talk a little bit about the relationship between 5 and 10. We know that 5 is half of 10, or 10 is twice as much as 5, the double of 5. If I'm looking at this number line, and I am going to make some jumps on the top number line, and I'm going to make those jumps of 10. So if I start at 0, and I make 6 jumps of 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I would land on 60. If I do the same number of jumps, 6 jumps, so on this one we did jumps of 10. If I do 6 jumps of 5, do you think I will land on a larger number or a smaller number than 60? Let's check. So I know 5 is halfway between 0 and 10. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When I did 6 jumps of 5, I made a mistake there. Let me revise my work. These should be jumps of 5. When I made 6 jumps of 5, I landed on 30. What do you notice about the relationship between 30 and 60? Right, 30 is half of 60, or 60 is twice as much as 30. And we know that 5 is half of 10, or 10 is twice as much as 5. So looking at this number line, you'll notice that it's missing some numbers. What would happen if how many jumps would it take for me to make jumps of 10 and land on 80? If I wanted to make jumps of 10. Yes, 8 jumps of 10. So let me see if I can get this correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's pretty close. How many jumps of 5 do you think it would take me to reach 80 if I wanted to make jumps of 5? I want you to think about the size of the jumps. Think about an adult walking with a small child. An adult has longer legs and can make fewer steps to get to the same place. A child may have to take twice as many steps to get to the same place because their legs are shorter. So if I'm making jumps of 5, those are shorter jumps. Those jumps would come in between. So for each jump of 10, I would need to make 2 jumps of 5. So how many total jumps of 5 would it take for me to get to 80? That's right. It would take 16 jumps of 5. 5 is half of 10, so it takes 2 jumps of 5 to equal 1 jump of 10. So I would need more jumps of 5. Okay, I want you to look at this number line. What do you notice? Okay, it starts at 0 on this end. It has 80 on this end. I want you to think about what the number might be that would be at this mark and what number might be at this mark. Notice the placement between the numbers 0 and 80. We know on a number line that the numbers have to be spaced equally. So what number would be halfway between 0 and 80? Because do you agree that this mark is halfway between 0 and 80? So if it is halfway, the number that is halfway between 0 and 80 would be 40. Now using that information, think about what this mark would represent. If this mark is 40 and this mark is 0, what would this mark be? Right, it would be 20. 20 is halfway between 0 and 40. So this mark on the number line would equal 20. Okay, looking at multiplying by 10 and 5. We're looking at that relationship. So if I'm filling out this chart, notice that I have the multiplication sign here. I'm taking the number on this side, multiplying it by 10 and putting it in this box. Taking the number here, multiplying it by 5 and putting the answer in this box. So let's start with 6. 6 times 10 is 60. We know from our other lesson that we take the 6 and then write the 0 behind it. 6 times 5 is 30. 10 is twice as much as 5. 60 is twice as much as 30. 7 times 10 is 70. 7 times 5, that's a tough one because you're thinking about splitting that 7 in half. So half of 60 is 30. Half of the 10 that you would add to 60 to make 70 is 5. So 7 times 5 is 35. Then if we're looking at 8, 8 times 10 is 80. 8 times 5 is half of 80, which is 40. Then 9 times 10 is 90. 9 times 5, this is another tricky one. 6 and 8 were easy because 6 and 8 are even numbers. 9 is an odd number. So I have to think about 80 plus 10 more equals 90. Half of 80 was 40, and half of this 10 that you added to make 90 is 5. So 9 times 5 is 45. 10 times 10 is 100. 10 times 5 is half of 100, which is 50. So we've looked at the relationship between 10 and 5. One strategy that you can use for figuring out multiplying by 5 is to take the other factor, multiply it by 10, and then take half, because 5 is half of 10. A strategy that I find is easier for most students is to list the multiples of 5 like I have here. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Then, when you need to multiply another number by 5, let's say 8 times 5, you can count down the 8th multiple. A multiple is just a number that you say when you're skip counting by that number. So multiples of 5 are the numbers I would say skip counting by 5. So if I need to do 8 times 5, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 5 is 40. If I needed to know 4 times 5, I count 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4th multiple of 5 is 20. So that gives me my answer. You could also look at a clock face and count by 5s until you got to the number that you were multiplying by. This video lesson has taught you how to multiply by 5.